permeates all country. In fact, the whole world has suffered greatly. With the situation with the COVID-19 virus, there's been a lot of fear, there's been a lot of confusion, there's been just so much loss, and there's been so much division. Certainly, there have been a lot of deaths. A lot of people have become seriously ill. A lot of people have lost loved ones. But there's also a lot of people who have lost their jobs. There's others who have lost their businesses. Many people have lived in isolation. I know my heart in particular way breaks for the people who have been in nursing homes, who can't have visitors, who for months on end were locked in their rooms. A lot of people haven't left their homes. There's a lot of grandparents who haven't hugged their grandchildren for almost a year. What a terrible loss for both the grandparents and the grandchildren. That shared love between grandparents and grandchildren are one of the greatest blessings in life. To not be able to give each other hugs is really a tragedy, a real tragedy. Now, before I go on, I want to point out that Romans 8 assures us that no matter what we face, that God is going to make all things work out right for the good for those who love him. He says, if God has done so much for us, how can we doubt that he's going to deliver us? And my friends, when we see all the heartaches and pains in our world today, that is an incredible promise. I also want to point out that while the COVID-19 virus has caused so much suffering, it's not the only virus out there. COVID-19, of course, is a physical virus, causing physical sickness and physical death. Now, it also has spiritual effects. So today, many are living in dire fear. But the Bible tells us not to live in fear. St. Paul, again, in that second reading said, if God is for us, who can be against us? And my friends, most of the point of Romans 8 is that we shouldn't live in fear because Jesus Christ has triumphed. Jesus Christ is on the throne. And no matter what happens, he's going to make all things work out right in the end for those who love him. And so while the COVID-19 virus is a physical virus that's also having spiritual effects, my friends, there are other viruses out there, spiritual viruses, that are much more deadly. Spiritual viruses that kill the life of the soul, which of course is far worse. Because the fact is, my friends, the bodies we have now, they're not going to last. Our bodies, no matter what age we are, no matter how healthy we are, our bodies are going to die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. None of us get out of here alive in this body. But we have this life to get us ready for the next life. So what really matters is the life of the soul. And there are several spiritual viruses that seek to kill the life of the soul. The first of those viruses is the media, especially the news media. Whether they be on the left or the right, the media encourages us to hate people who disagree with us, right? They encourage us to hold in contempt people who have different opinions. And of course, it's such a dilemma because if we're going to be faithful citizens, we need to know what's going on, but the media on the left and the right doesn't give us the full picture. It encourages us to hate. And God doesn't want us to hate. God calls us to love our enemies. God calls us to pray for our persecutors. God calls us to desire the best for everyone. The media, especially the news media, but also the entertainment media, TV, movies, music, they have become deadly viruses that can lead to the death of our souls. So, for instance, TV and movies now portray seriously sinful behaviors as just an alternative lifestyle that are acceptable way of life, no big deal. Encouraging people to live a life of sin which can kill their souls. They can kill the divine life that is in us. It can kill the grace of God in us that makes the life of heaven possible. And so, folks, I have to warn you, if you spend hours a day immersed in the media, or even hours every week immersed in the media, you're probably putting your spiritual life at grave risk. I know personally, I used to listen to talk radio. And at the time, I would have told you I enjoyed it. But several years ago, inspired by the children of Fatima, the 3 children that Blessed Mary appeared to in Fatima, she gave them a glimpse of hell. And that glimpse of hell horrified them. So for the rest of their lives, they fasted and prayed for what they called poor sinners. They were so horrified by hell, they wanted no one to go there. So they fasted and prayed for poor sinners. And I know that impacted my attitude, because sometimes my attitude wasn't, oh, there's poor sinners. I had a different attitude, but I won't get into that. So I thought, well, maybe I should do the same. But I knew if I fasted from food, my main motivation would be to lose weight. So I decided to fast from talk radio. So now when I'm in the car or taking a walk, I don't listen to the radio, I pray the rosary. I pray for our country. I pray for the church throughout the world. I pray for our parish. I pray for my family. I pray for people I know who are sick. Now, when I listened to talk radio, I found that I was very angry. I was so frustrated. I was filled sometimes with hatred. I hated what some people were doing, especially people in Washington. So praying the rosary for them instead of hating them is much more in keeping with what God wants of us, right? So we need to be praying, not immersing ourselves in poisonous attitudes. Another deadly virus that permeates our culture today, that the media is a part of, is secularism. But this secularism resides on our college campuses in a big way, even many so-called Catholic college campuses. Most college campuses have become havens of anti-God propaganda. Many professors hold Christian believers in contempt, and they train their students to do the same. And many of them, in denying God, have become deniers of the nature that God gave us. And in doing so, they become deniers of science. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, students are taught that if you have 2 X chromosomes in every cell of your body, that doesn't make you a female. No! If you have an X and Y chromosome in every cell of your body, that doesn't make you a male. No! You can decide what you want to be. You can choose your own gender. Of course, it's a denial of reality. Again, in denying God, the creator of nature, they deny that human life begins at the moment of conception. And they promote an atmosphere that anyone who wants to protect human life, that they're haters. If you want to protect human life, you're a hater. Or if you think that God made people male or female and you can't change that, well, then you're a hater. And it's okay for you to hate the haters. Many on college campuses promote a life of sin and certainly encourage their students to reject the wisdom of God, especially as that wisdom comes to us through the teaching of the church. But the fact is, my friends, God's wisdom is the only path to heaven. And make no mistake about it, it is the path to heaven. But God's wisdom also is what leads to joy in this life. When we embrace God's wisdom here and now, when we live by God's wisdom here and now, that's the way to joy and peace here and now. And of course, it's a paradox because living by God's wisdom isn't always easy because of our fallen human nature. But it's only when we embrace the wisdom of God and live the wisdom of God and love the wisdom of God that we're going to find joy and peace in this life. So what this virus on college campuses is doing is leading our young people to a life of misery. For example, again, they tell students you can choose your own gender. But you know what they never tell students? Is people who are transgendered, 15 years out, they have 20 times the rate of suicide as a normal population. 20 times the rate of suicide. They're setting their students up for misery. So their denial of science, their denial of reality is leading many, many, many people to heartache and pain and misery. The fact is, this virus on college campuses is leading to misery not only in this life, but that virus can lead their students to eternal misery, since their rejection of faith can lead them away from God forever. I have to tell you, if I were a parent, I don't know what I would do. You know, you want to give your children the best education, you want to give them the best opportunity to get good jobs and make a good living. And of course, while it's true that some faithful Christians go to colleges and the contempt and condescending attitude they find directed toward people of faith only strengthens their resolve to be faithful to God, and that's wonderful. God bless those students. But there are many others who succumb to this poisonous virus on our campuses, and the life of their souls is drained out of them. I don't know as a parent if I'd want to take the chance to expose my kids to that virus. It should certainly be a concern for every faithful, loving parent. You need to try to arm your children, if they're going to go to college, to face this onslaught that can be spiritually deadly. You know, my friends, when I see the steps that so many people are taking today to protect themselves against the COVID-19 virus, which for the most part only affects our bodies, I can't understand how so many of us expose ourselves and our children to deadly spiritual viruses of the media and college campuses that can snuff out the life of the soul. If we can take precautions to protect our body, shouldn't we take even more precautions to protect the life of the soul? My friends, following God and his wisdom isn't always easy. Just ask Abraham in our first reading today. Okay, it's not always easy. St. Paul tells us in Romans 8 that suffering is going to be a part of our lives. That this life is not going to always be easy, even for faith-filled Christians. But God and God alone is the one who gives meaning to our life. And God gives us sure guidance through the minefield of this life so that we can find joy here and joy in eternity. I want to encourage you to not live in fear because Jesus Christ has triumphed. But at the same time, I want to encourage you to protect yourself and your kids against deadly viruses that surround us. Be prudent, of course, in dealing with COVID-19. But even more importantly, take steps to guide yourselves and your children against the deadly viruses of the media and secularism today.